Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Andy Bates. I almost forgot to say my name.
Uh-oh.
Not used to switching up that order. I almost said I'm Sarah Gulseth.
Doesn't
but
it
you already
sound
said
weird
that.
in your head?
It does.
It sounds weird in your head, I know. But anyway, we have special events that we're talking about today, things that are going on, special people in St. Louis, and as is our usual tradition, when there is an American Kantorei concert around the corner and there's Bach in the air, we get to talk with Dr. Maurice Boyer, the music director of the American Kantorei, joining us in studio today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's always really fun to get to have you in studio and talk like really nerdy stuff about Bach for 12 minutes. It's pretty great.
Of all the things to have in the air, Bach is what I prefer.
Bach is in the air.
That's what I prefer to have in the air.
Quite literally this weekend. The American Kantorei has concerts coming up this weekend, November 16th at Immanuel Lutheran in Washington, Missouri, which is a new location. Very exciting. And then on Sunday, the usual concert at St. Paul's de Pere, part of their Music at St. Paul's series. Lots of Bach, lots of cantatas, lots of really good theology as usual. Dr. Boyer, what makes the American Kantorei a unique group out of all of the music groups that are in this area, and there are several? What makes the Kantorei a unique group?
Well, our focus is exclusively on the music of Bach, and actually particularly the cantatas. I know that that's not exactly how it always has been. Mm-hmm. I know in the past, when Dr. Bercht was the music director of the group, the late Dr. Bercht, the focus was a little broader. It was also Bach and sort of the folks who came before him. But I've decided to just focus on Bach and the cantatas.
And there's plenty of them.
Yes, there certainly are. Yeah, and there are about 200 that are just shy of that that we have of sacred cantatas. There are some secular ones as well. Although he did write many more, or at least potentially many more. We're not exactly sure how many cantatas he actually wrote.
So you're doing all 200?
Yes, that's right. This weekend, yeah.
Sunrise to sunset and beyond.
Exactly. Yeah.
That would be intense.
That would be indeed intense.
Do I hear challenge accepted?
Oh, man.
Well, no. It would be fun.
Oh, boy.
A Bachathon.
I was about to say it.
What is on deck for the programs this weekend?
Okay, for this weekend we have 4 cantatas, actually. And as is the case for most of the cantatas, they were written within a very narrow span of time. So the 2 of them are from 1724, one of them from 1726, and the last from 1729. So he wrote them in a really concentrated period. I guess you might say if there's an overall theme to it, you might say that it's sort of the ways in which God manifests his care and his love amid sorrow, suffering, as we prepare for death, and just is with us. These ideas permeate the program.
Yeah, we do sing about death a lot, but in a good way.
Yes, actually, almost. I mean, there are ways in which death is the sort of the anticipation of our dying, of our bodies dying. We, of course, go through darkness, so there's some really dark moments in the program. But there's also another sort of the underlying sort of expressive tenor, and the overlying idea is that death is not the end. So there is really radiance, almost like a welcoming into heavenly rest that permeates the program.
Mm-hmm. And one of these is about baptism too.
That's right. And amazing
baptism written really big on the top.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the final cantata of the program is an ascension cantata, actually. But rather than focus on the really dramatic aspects of the ascension narrative, in the gospel, it actually focuses on the just baptism and the significance of that for the Christian. So it really focuses the lens on that rather than on the drama of the narrative. It's a rather intimate work, actually, focusing again on two words that occur in the bookends in the opening movement, the final movement. Baptism as the pledge of love, and the seal of grace. So those are kind of the two ideas that sort of sustain through that beautiful cantata, and actually connects back. I mean, if one thinks of manifestation as Epiphany, the notion of Epiphany, not the feast day itself, but there is a neat moment in the center of the cantata where there's a duet for soprano and alto that actually quotes, that is this one of the verses from Wie schön leuchtet, so harking back to the Epiphany. So this idea of manifestation and presence with.
Yeah. So you mentioned 4 cantatas. Which cantatas are they, and what are kind of the themes of each one of them?
Sure. So the first one is Cantata 93, which in translation would render "Whoever lets only the dear God reign." I'll just mention them first, and then maybe say a little bit about each of them. Then, the second one is Cantata 27, "Who knows how near my end is to me." The third one, the most intimate of all the works, is BWV 156. I stand with one foot in the grave. I know it sounds grim, but it's actually a radiant piece. It's probably one of the brightest in the whole program, apart from the Ascension piece. Mm-hmm. And then 37, which is whoever believes and is baptized. That's the Ascension cantata. Mm-hmm. So for the first cantata, it's a chorale cantata, so it's permeated with a chorale melody and a chorale text, either the chorale text in paraphrase or sort of stated verbatim. And here the hymn that is quoted throughout is in our Lutheran service book is "If thou but trust in God to guide thee," mm-hmm. And so that's the tune that permeates. And so there, obviously, amid worry or sadness or suffering, knowing that God is there and guiding, even in ways in which one may not perceive immediately. And the way Bach shows that musically is there'll always be sort of a hint of the chorale melody or the outline of the chorale tune, or it's stated verbatim. Again, it's just a way for him in very simple and not simple, I mean, it's subtle musical terms, or sometimes subtle terms, to just sort of effect in sound that presence at the core. The second cantata, that's the one that has to do very specifically with one's end. So here it's really a contemplation of death, sort of the warring, I guess you might say, of the here with us, essentially within us, that deathward bent, I guess you might say, that our lives have, earthly lives have, and this sort of the deliverance and essentially the resurrection that awaits us. So that would be the theme in that. It has an up and down trajectory the whole way through, but it ultimately leads to freedom and peace and joy. Those are the last words that one hears in that cantata. Mm-hmm. The third cantata, as I mentioned, Epiphany cantata, it starts with a symphonia that is actually probably one of the most well-known slow movements by Bach. Most folks may know it from one of his keyboard concertos, the keyboard concerto in F minor. It's the slow movement from that piece, but this is the original version. It's for oboe and strings. He later sort of adapted it as a keyboard piece. And so here again, it starts out with having essentially one foot in the grave. That's what this means. And one of the things that's amazing about the cantata is that you can feel that one foot in the grave, and that the whole opening aria it has this unstable rhythmic feel to it. It's you don't quite know where the downbeat is, mm-hmm. So this is sense that you're sort of tottering on both sides, the here and the beyond, and the grave. So just an extremely how shall I say, vivid portrayal of that, being in that sort of place. And again, here, as I mentioned, the trajectory is toward freedom and deliverance. The final cantata, as we just mentioned a few minutes ago, is an Ascension cantata. And so here it's almost as if this is the most overt answer to all the questions that had been posed earlier. You know, where does one find peace, joy, freedom, reconciliation with God? It's in the Christ. So in and through the Christ.
Yeah.
Well, we have about 2 minutes left and about 3 hours worth of conversation.
Yes.
Let's go back into that.
Yes.
You made the distinction earlier, Bach having both secular and sacred cantatas.
Yes.
Sacred meaning that that the cantata is presenting a sacred text, the scriptures. How does Bach treat the text? How does his music treat the text? How does it present the text?
Yeah, well, I guess first of all I should say that the text of the cantatas are sort of commentary on the gospel of the day, typically. Sometimes it might comment on the epistle, but most of the time it's directly a response to the gospel text. So a librettist, sometimes it is known who that librettist was. Sometimes it's the very prolific Anonymous who provides the libretto. And so Bach, working from this libretto by a poet or an anonymous person with whom he'd collaborated, comments. It's like they're mini sermons that in music that occurred. And these are all for the Divine Liturgy, either for the morning service in Leipzig or for Vespers in the afternoon at a different church. They would typically be performed in that manner. And so they were part and parcel of the liturgy. It occurred after the reading of the gospel and before the sermon. Or occasionally, if it was a two-part cantata, the second part would be performed during communion. So really a very prominent part of the service. And most of them, as they end with a chorale, have something that the listener and the congregant could sort of very immediately relate to his or her own experience, and maybe even be able to sing along in his or her mind as it unfolds. So that's a little background about that.
So hear this great Bach music this weekend, Saturday, November 16th, 7:30 p.m. at Immanuel Lutheran Church in Washington, Missouri. Sunday, November 17th, 3 p.m., St. Paul's Lutheran Church in De Pere. And hear great Bach. How can we follow what's going on with the American Kantorei?
AmericanKantorei.org. And on Facebook, too.
Very good. And you just might hear our very own Sarah Gulseth.
And Luther.
Mr. Gulseth there as well. And looking at the program notes, I just happened to notice that in December there's a very special event coming up as well.
Oh, yes.
Sing Along Messiah.
Sing Along Messiah. It'll be super fun. Everyone should come.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boyer, for being our guest and being on the Coffee Hour and spending some time in St. Louis for the American Kantorei.
Thanks a lot.
I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.